there's a term that's probably maybe a year and a half, 2 years old, called social justice. And that's the term that's permeating the society at this particular point in time. And so our next presenter, Dr. Linda Thurston, is going to give you some experience, some knowledge about this concept. Linda serves in the capacity as Associate Dean of the College of Education at Kansas State University. I've had the opportunity and pleasure of knowing her for a number of years. She did a tour of duty with the National Science Foundation as a PI, Principal Investigator. She has received numerous awards, especially in the area for gender, disability, and is currently the co-PI for the Kansas LAMP project. Her research includes gender, disability, issues on post-secondary STEM education, mentoring, and program evaluation. Linda has conducted research and taught about disability and gender and evaluation issues for more than 30 years. I didn't say that too loud because she's really only about 17. So, without further ado, please give a round of applause for the Associate Dean of the College of Education, Dr. Linda Thurston.
I'm really honored to be here with all of you, and I'm honored to be here with MEAC. I'm a huge fan of their work and all the people who work with MEAC. They're in the same building I am, so when I need a resource or an idea or a conversation or just this community, I head up to the 4th floor and I can talk with them. So I'm going to talk a little bit about social justice education, and I need you to know that I'm not an expert. I don't think there are any experts in that. But I have been working in the field for several years, and I've been working for the last couple of years with a group from K-State on a graduate certificate on social justice education. And so that's a group of colleagues from the College of Ed, and it often included Dr. Warren Grice, Dr. Morales here, and Dr. Brandon. And we came from special ed, psych, counseling, leadership, teacher prep, all those fields in education. So we each brought our own blends and our own experiences and expertise to that group, and there was a lot on the table. But we didn't always agree about what social justice education was, how we should do it, what should be in the certificate, what shouldn't be in the certificate. But we did really form a sense of community, and we did really learn a lot from each other. And so now it's up and rolling, and that experience has informed my remarks today. I want to note that my slides and the resources and projects that I'll be briefly talking about will be on the MEAC website. Foundations, frameworks, and fantasies. First, foundation. What are the foundations of our work in social justice education? Well, one of the sources of our fundamental thinking is all the great educators and activists in our fields. These individuals have given us theory, philosophy, and inspiration that help us think about the meaning and practice of social justice education. So we'll start with John Dewey. John Dewey's book, Democracy in Education, was first published in 1916. It's still a foundational work. It's required in our certificate program. Dewey was the most significant educational thinker of his era, and some people say of the whole 20th century. He was a philosopher, a social reformer, an educator, and he changed the fundamental approach in this country to teaching and learning. Okay? Think what that was like in 1916, and listen to what he espoused. Students needed to be invested in their own learning. The curriculum should be relevant to their lives. Learning should be meaningful to students. Participation in their own learning was essential. That's what we're talking about. The next person, Paulo Freire, who's a Brazilian educator and philosopher. He was a leading advocate of critical pedagogy. His book is, he's written many books, but the most influential one is Pedagogy of the Oppressed, and that's also required reading in our program. There is so much about him on the internet. There are people giving lectures about his ideas. There are schools and institutes all over the world about his ideas, so you can look those up if you're interested in learning more about him. I love this quote. To me, this sort of personifies his work. A teacher is, of course, an artist, but being an artist does not mean he or she can make a profile or shape the students. What an educator does in teaching is to make it possible for the students to become themselves. So I'll just do one more. This is Mary McLeod Bethune. Bethune was an educator who founded Bethune Copeland College, which is now one of the top-ranked historically black colleges and universities in the whole country. She served in several capacities with Franklin Delano Roosevelt's administration. She was a good friend of Eleanor Roosevelt, who was one of my personal heroes. Bethune's parents were former slaves, and most of her siblings were born into slavery. And she decided as a young girl that one of the main differences between a black child and a white child is that a white child knew how to read and write. And when she was a kid, she dedicated her life to education, especially of African American children. This is a quote from her. "For I am my mother's daughter, and the drums of Africa still beat in my heart. And they will not let me rest where there is a single Negro boy or girl without a chance to prove his worth." There are so many others who inform and inspire us. Maria Montessori, who worked in the slums in Italy, who believed that every child deserved an appropriate pedagogy and that every child could achieve. Wilma Mankiller, former chief of the Cherokee Nation, who said, "I don't think anybody anywhere can talk about the future of their people or their organization without talking about education. Whoever controls education controls our future." So these are all building blocks on the foundations of social justice education. In addition, there are our own building blocks from our own personal thoughts about education. People who inspired us to think about and to practice just and fair educational practices and environments. Mine include Jonathan Cole's book, Savage Inequalities, the work of Carol Gilligan, who challenged the gendered norm of moral development, David and Myra Sadler, who wrote prolifically about fairness in the classroom, the Teaching Tolerance publications, and my mother, who taught primary students, and her students, when she died at the age of 89, wrote letters to us, her children, about her lasting impact on their lives. So think for a minute, who are yours? Who are your building blocks of your foundations in what you do? Who informs and inspires you? Okay, my turn. I have the mic. You know, when Wilma Mankiller was asked about, she was the first female chief of the Cherokee Nation, and people who knew how those council meetings go said, "How did you manage that?" She said, "I control the mic." Okay, so we moved from foundations. Now we're going to talk about some frameworks. There are many frameworks for social justice education. That's why I can't give you a definition or a checklist. Okay? But what I'm going to do is to borrow from some of the work of Christine Sleater, who synthesized a lot of approaches and frameworks into sort of four main fundamental elements of social justice education. So I'm going to talk to you about each of those four, just a little bit of background, because you can read those if you're interested. And then I'm going to give you a couple of examples of each one, and then some challenges to each one. Then we'll go to the fantasy part. So the first one is high expectations. Okay, so this is high expectations to teach too high expectations, not to have high expectations. We read, that's just having them isn't enough. But to teach too high expectations by building on students' culture, language, experience, identities. So we can set the bar higher. What this means is we can set the bar higher than we might because we're using the students' knowledge that they bring to the classroom as the foundation. So we can set the bar higher. Lots of materials are written about the pedagogy of building on the intellectual foundations and experiences that students bring to the classroom, so I'm not going to say anything about that. I'm just going to give you a couple of examples of building on students' culture, experience, and identities. Kistler and her colleagues have written about teaching math in a cultural context. One of the projects they describe is a collaboration between the Alaska Yupik Native elders, teachers, and math educators. Together, they built a curriculum to supplement the math curriculum in the schools, and they especially wanted to engage Native students in learning math. Very successful. Here's some other things people have done. How about the use of urban hip-hop to teach music patterns or literacy? And slam poetry. Susan Summers Willett wrote a book, The Cultural Politics of Slam Poetry. And in that book, she explores the relationships between slam and identity and politics. It's really interesting. I'd never even heard of slam poetry until a couple of months ago. So our challenge in teaching to high expectations by building a curriculum on our students' experiences and identities and the knowledge that they bring about their culture is the pushback that you all get from standardized testing, prescribed teaching, mandated curricula. It's also a challenge to push back some of our own deficit thinking that we sometimes get into, which is actually sometimes institutionalized in our practices. Too often we look at students and problematize the student. And then we think how to fix it. So students with behavior and emotional and behavior disorders, they're a problem. How do we fix them? Immigrant children are a problem. How do we fix them? Gay and lesbian youth are a problem. How do we fix them? But our challenge is to build on the strengths of those identities and those experiences and all that background knowledge that they have and go up from that. Paulo Freire said, you can never get there by starting there. You can get there by starting here. Here's one more example. There was an engineering instructor at the University of Alaska, and he wondered why he didn't have any Native Alaskans in his engineering classes. So he asked, and he was told, well, they can't do math, or physics is really too hard for them, or they're not really prepared for college, or they're not computer literate, or they're not really interested in leaving their village and having a profession. He didn't really believe that. So he started with a couple of high school students who were Native Alaskan and a box of computer parts. And he said, if you can build computers, you can have them. And they did. That was a long time ago. So now the program is hugely successful. It's developed a lot of Native Alaskan engineers. And I want you to see this building. This building houses their program. There are places in this building for summer schools, for summer students in high school from the big outlying areas in Alaska. There's places for them to get together and talk and work on things in their own peer group. Look at the shape of this building. The other side looks just like this. It's the shape of a native canoe. Okay, the second framework is analysis of structural inequities. When we think about our students, we need to remember to situate them and their families within an analysis of the structural inequities where they live or have lived. That means get the bigger picture. Students are not separate from their context. And students and families are very much affected and impacted by the multiple inequities that are built into the systems around them. Inequities of social, economic, power structures. And these structures limit their access to all those resources that most of us just sort of take for granted. They just don't have access because of some of those structural inequities. And that's what we need to remember. So examples, proximity to grocery stores, healthcare, jobs that pay a living wage, role models for their professions, public transportation to go to a museum or a program at the local university, healthy living conditions, healthy work environments, school resources such as preschool, adequately resourced schools, libraries. They can't access those resources. So we're challenged to understand our students by looking at the institutionalized inequities in their lives. It's so much easier to get trapped and go back into some of those common stereotypes. It's not the social inequities. Girls just aren't good at math. It's really not. The community, people in wheelchairs who can't play basketball. Those African American middle schoolers hanging out on the street corner, they're just up to no good. Native Alaskan students can't become engineers. Again, problematizing the student keeps us from looking at the big picture of all those built-in inequities that we take for granted. So I'll just give you an example here. The term universal design was coined by an architect, Ron Mace, to describe the concept of designing products and the built environment so that it was aesthetic but also usable to the biggest extent possible by everybody, regardless of age, ability, social status. Like this lovely sloped, winding sidewalk instead of stairs. So then Selwyn Goldsmith took Mason's ideas and put them even farther. He wrote a book called Designing for the Disabled. His most significant contribution, besides that pioneering idea, was curb cuts, which we all take for granted now. And if you're a runner, or you have a stroller, or you have some sort of problem where you fall down easily, those curb cuts are great. So Goldsmith. So people with physical disabilities, simple idea of curb cuts give them access to places in the community they could not have gone before. So that's an example. Some of you may be working with Universal Design for Learning, UDL. It's the same principle applied to the learning environment, avoiding structural inequities in the learning environment by designing education to be accessed by as many people as possible, regardless of their background or their ability. Now, look at these pictures. You can't see them very well, so this may not work anyway. So look at these pictures. Now, these are all pictures of students with disabilities, and they all have something in the picture that is ameliorating some barriers to their access to education or social life that they wouldn't have had otherwise. So I'll just, over in this corner, upper left hand, that's a picture of two young men in a chemistry lab. This is in a college. Now, one of these young men is visually impaired. And he now has access to learning chemistry for two things that are in this picture you may be able to see. One is that he's got a peer pair. So that's one strategy. Then the other, right in front of, right, you can't, yeah, right down there, Ronna, looks like a monitor of a computer. Okay. That is a screen where you can make the text big, okay, so that he can see the big print text, and that's got the instructions for doing the lab experiment. Otherwise, he had no access to learning chemistry, which opens up the doors to a lot of great paying careers. All right, then up the top over there, that young woman had a lot of physical problems with dexterity, and so she has got a computer with a different, an adapted keyboard. You know, a lot of those things on your smartphone were first designed for students with disabilities. My audiologist, when I was complaining that I can't always hear my phone, showed me how to do that flashing thing, all of that. So if you can't hear it, it flashes anyway. Pretty cool. So then this one up here in the middle, those are three high school students, and one of them is deaf. Okay. So they're using texting, they're using speech to text on a smartphone to have a conversation that young woman never would have had access to unless it was somebody who could sign. And then this one down here, this young woman is able to access a community space in her high school so she can talk with other people. She doesn't have to go upstairs. It's accessible, so she can just join her peers. And that the little boy over there with the yellow ball, I just like that picture. Okay, you've probably seen this a million times. We use this when we talk about universal design. It's really an obvious example of structural inequity. So would you please shovel the ramp? Well, you'll have to wait till I shovel the stairs so all these other kids can get in, but everybody can use the ramp. Why don't you shovel it first? So that's just an obvious example. Okay, the third framework is reciprocal relationships. So developing relationships, reciprocal relationships with students, families, communities. It's really hard, but it's really an important part of social justice education. Marilyn Cochran-Smith defines reciprocal relationships as working with, not against, individuals, families, and communities. I think of reciprocity as sort of the opposite of charity, which is one way, it's not reciprocal, giving something to the poor, deserving somebody. Reciprocal means give and take for everybody, that we all have strengths and knowledge, and recognizing and respecting what everybody brings to the table. Audre Lorde said, if you're not at the table, you're probably on the menu. So sometimes we may develop one-way relationships because we believe our knowledge might be superior to other knowledge, especially if the other knowledge is from a non-dominant group. In school settings, we may believe that we know more about the child and the child's background than the people in the community might know. When I work with pre-service teachers and helping them practice doing conferences with families, one of the things I told them was, I said, you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth. You need to listen twice as much as you talk. And that will help you remember that the real expert in your student's life is not you, it's the parents. I will tell you that that is quite a challenge for college professors. So here's an example from my own work. Many years ago, I worked in a very low-income community, not too far from here actually, where we provided in-home education for single moms in public housing who had young children with disabilities. We decided that the moms really needed more than the information, the educational information we were working on with them. So we set up some workshops for them based on what we thought they should know. And we had experts on nutrition, budgeting, child management, assertiveness come in. We provided food, transportation, childcare. We were so great. Now, just guess, did they come back after the first workshop? No, they didn't. Did they learn anything? No, we did. We learned a lot. So we tried it. We invited the moms in our program and their friends to help us look at the curriculum. What was their expertise? What did they know about solving problems in their own community? What did they know about the problems their friends in their community had? What were their strengths in navigating the system? And boy, did they have a lot. So they added all that content expertise. We added some pedagogical expertise, and it was reciprocal. We did it again, and that program was adopted all over the country. Here's another example of working with community, not against it. This is a poem that I have been reading to students ever since it first came out in Ms. Magazine in December 1984. I call it a reflection on normativity, but the author, B.J. Wrights, calls it Insanity Black. It happened in the kindergarten class, right at the table when they were having snacks. Joni asked a question and they all sat back. Mr. Slater, can Santa Claus be black? Poor Mr. Slater didn't know what to say. Vacation was just 20 days away. There were snowflakes to cut and window wreaths to be hung, cards to be printed, songs to be sung. He didn't have to think about all this, what all this was about. In 20 more days, school would be out. Why couldn't they wait and ask their questions then, where other people were at home to answer them? Mr. Slater, can Santa be thin? Is Santa Claus always a him? Mr. Slater looked at 20 pairs of eyes, 20 children of every shape and size. He ate a bit of cracker and finished his drink. Children, he said, I need time to think. And as soon as class was over, he ran down the hall, he skidded around the corner, crashed into a wall, ran up the steps to the second floor, rapped on the window of the principal's door. Miss Fraser, what can I do? The children ask these questions that now I ask of you. Can Santa be black? Is Santa Claus thin? Does Santa always have to be a him? Mr. Slater, it's a difficult task to find the answers to the questions you ask. I think with these I'll need some assistance, but I'll get the answers to you with a little persistence. Miss Fraser turned on her swivel chair, picked up the phone, and dialed Mr. Dare. Mr. Dare was the head of the PTA. He called a meeting for the very next day. Thank you for coming, he said with a greeting. I'd like to get right to the point of this meeting. Mr. Slater, in charge of the kindergarten class, needs the answers to some questions, and he needs it real fast. Can Santa be black? Can Santa be thin? Does Santa always have to be a him? The parents didn't know what to say. Vacation was only 19 days away. There were cookies to bake and lights to be hung, to string. There were gifts to wrap and carols to sing. Well, parents, are there any suggestions? Do we have answers to these difficult questions? Well, who knows best what this is about? Let's ask Santa, someone said in the shout. So the secretary of the PTA sent a letter to Santa the very next day. The reply came back very, very fast, addressed to Mr. Slater in the kindergarten class. Dear Mr. Slater, dear boys, dear girls, dear boys, once a storyteller caught me bringing you toys. The year he spied me opening my sack, my skin was white and my boots were black. And probably you know how the story goes. I laid a finger at the side of my nose, and all these years, needlessly, that story worries children who don't have a chimney. All year long, I listen to the news, read people's thoughts, see people's views. At the end of the year, when I see what's needed most, I take that shape like a Christmas ghost. I can pass through keyholes, windows, and locks, apartment buildings, hospitals, tents, trailer lots. One year I used a wheelchair in place of my sleigh. I once was blind and felt my way. My skin has been black, white, yellow, red, brown. My eyes have been slanted, crossed, and round. Sometimes I have been a sheep. All these things are a part of me. And you may not believe, though, this is true, but that's okay, boys and girls, because I believe in you. Okay, our fourth framework is democratic activism. Our educational work needs to integrate all the marginalized voices in our schools and our communities and explicitly address issues of inequity, privilege, and power. Not tokenisms or euphemisms like that current textbook case where in Texas, where they call slaves workers. Slater calls this developing democratic activism. That is preparing young people to analyze and confront forms of inequities that they and their families and communities face. Here's an example. This is from the website of the Chicago Grassroots Curriculum Group. This group is teachers, students, and community members, and they all work together to do curricula for their community. So they developed a toolkit to engage students, mostly young people of color and from poor communities, to engage them academically, personally, and politically in their own community. So the students became involved in a sophisticated analysis of Chicago history and the history of their own communities. And they used the academic skills they were learning to speak up and work for changes on behalf of their communities. So the project is multidisciplinary. It includes problem solving, accurate histories, all voices. It's project-based, real-life skill applications, kinesthetic, justice-oriented, culturally responsive, and it works. But it's a challenge to go beyond MLK celebrations and a couple of books about Hanukkah in the library during the holidays. Student democratic activism can be threatening to those in power. And empowering our students to take action is sometimes risky. One time I did assertiveness training with all my staff and they asked me all for a raise. But having students define a problem, collect the data, make the decisions, and become independent actors in their own lives and communities, it's a lot easier said than done. It's sometimes easier to hand them a fish than to teach them to fish. Now, these four frameworks are just as important in relatively homogeneous or privileged communities, because I think we all know that there's no community that's completely homogeneous, egalitarian, and supportive of all the diverse people who live there. It might be religious intolerance. It might be institutionalized gender stereotypes. It might be segregation or infantilizing of individuals with disabilities. It might be discrimination or violence towards students with GLBTQ identities. It's hard work. Hard, H-A-R-D. It's hard work. So how do we keep going? Well, my advice is to think about unicorns. million times when I was young. And for some reason, I can't figure out, it's my grandson's favorite movie to watch at Grandma's. The Last Unicorn. This and Walking with Dinosaurs. You know, there's so many stories and legends about unicorns. Were they real? Did they really choose not to get on the ark? Are they magical? Can they cure diseases? Can they only be seen by the pure of heart? One of the points of the last unicorn is that there's never a last one. We just don't know where they are, and some people just can't see them. In the book, the unicorns are the waves of the ocean, and their long curly manes make up that white froth that's at the top of the big waves. In the book, the unicorns needed to be found because the world was losing its color and everything was becoming black and white. Or here's another take on unicorns. The cover story in the February 2015 Fortune magazine was The Age of Unicorns. They're called unicorns, the companies that have soared to $1 billion valuation based on fundraising. The billion-dollar tech startups, they were once the source of myth, say the writers of that article, Aaron Griffith and Dan Freeman. These are companies that you may know. Uber, Airbnb, Dropbox, Pinterest. The article describes the top 50 unicorn entrepreneurs, and you know what's fun? They're not all men and they're not all white. It used to be that unicorns were these mythical creatures, says Jason Green, who's a venture capitalist who invests in potential unicorns. He said, now there are a herd of unicorns. So let's be unicorns. Let's take stock of ourselves. Let's question and challenge our own biases and values. Let's develop strong and meaningful relationships with students, families, communities. Let's become learners of our students' realities. Let's become multilingual, multicultural. Let's challenge heteronormativity. Let's develop a community of critical friends and develop learning environments that are fair and affirming. Let's engage in continual reflection. All these are attributes of a social justice education unicorn. The rise of the unicorn, the Fortune magazine writer said, has occurred rapidly and without much warning, and it's starting to freak some people out. Now, wouldn't that be fun? So I want to end this session with a short set of slides. We call this the Faces of Social Justice Education. And Ronna, right here, from MIA, put this all together for our Not Just a Year of Social Justice Education programs that we're doing at K-State this year. The singers in the background are the 5th graders at Amanda Arnold Elementary School in Manhattan, Kansas. One of those is my granddaughter.
Faces of Social Justice.
Oh
Social Justice Certification Program, College of Education, Kansas State University.
That's on the MEAC website. Feel free to use it for anything you want. Thank you for your attention and participation. You have a great meeting ahead of you. I'm excited to be here. I'll be here the whole time. Please feel free to come up and introduce yourself and tell me about your stories, your programs, your ideas, examples, arguments, anything you'd like. Thank you very much.